in mind. The goal is to ensure that we are raising 21st century kids. I hope you agree with me. You're welcome to episode 14. Yes, last week we talked about and designed a decision tree and rubric on self-regulation. We determined how to code our lesson activities to gauge the amount of self-regulation happening in our classroom. And today, we are going to be looking at 2 lessons. The 2 lessons will help us identify exactly how to code our lesson activity. So we'll look at these 2 lessons and determine indeed what level of self-regulation is going on. I hope it's going to be informative for you. Stay tuned. In the self-regulation decision tree, we explored 3 big questions. First, the question is, the lesson activity, is it long-term? Does it provide the students the lesson objectives and success criteria? The second question is, the children, the students, do they have the ability and possibility of planning their own work? And the third question, the students. Again, it's always on the students. So the third question is, do the students have the ability to review their work, get feedback, and revisit and restructure their work based on the feedback? Now, take a look at the rubric. Look at it. We have from code 1 to 4, the questions that need to be answered and the characteristics that determine the coding of each particular activity. Nice, right? Miss Amaka has decided to give her students a project. In this project, they are expected to talk about Third World War II, and they are expected to put together this project on Wiki so that anyone can access this information on Wiki. Interesting projects, right? So take a look at this. In lesson 1, Third World II is Miss Amaka's project, and the children are in year 4. Now, the duration of the project is 2 weeks, and the goals are for the students to learn about the war and larger issues surrounding it so that they can think critically, form their opinions. They need to also learn to use methods that historians use and learn to compare and evaluate a variety of news sources. Also, Ms. Amaka wants her students to be able to learn how to make a class wiki and present information to a broader audience apart from their educators and classmates, which they are already used to. Ms. Amaka also wants her students to be able to create and launch wiki for use by students in other countries. They'll be thinking about users that have different needs of their own. Interesting, right? I love Ms. Amaka's project, don't you? Now, what happens next? How do we know what and how we can code this activity? Let's take a look at this. In the classroom discussions, Ms. Amaka asked the following questions. What are we going to learn about? What do we know so far about doing historical research? How can we evaluate each group's contribution to the wiki? What criteria can we use? And of course, they would then be able to create a rubric for this activity. Then, who is the audience for the website? It will be particularly interesting to get feedback and postings from people in Nigeria. Also, how can we reach people in this audience? And what design features for the website should we agree on? So you see that in this activity and from the classroom discussions, the children know their learning goals. They know their success criteria. They see that obviously the activity is long term. Also, they are able to plan their own work. They are able to evaluate the group's contribution. They are able to decide their own criteria and create their own rubric. Beautiful, right? Also, the students are able to also design their own website. Now, in the last part, Ms. Amaka confided in us that the children will be required to share the activity or their progress every 3 days, and based on the feedback they get, they'll be required to make modifications to this project. Swear, right? So we see then that they answer the questions and the criteria up from code 1 to code 4. Beautiful. So how can we code this activity? We code it what? Code 4, you're amazing. So yes, this activity is coded code 4 because they answer all the 3 big questions affirmative, and it's a very, very interesting one. Now, let's take a look at lesson 2. In lesson 2, Miss Pedro wants her kids to design a lever. I love science, don't you? And that's why I'm a very, very, very big fan of STEM, because I love science so much. So great. Miss Pedro wants her children to design a lever, particularly a catapult. And the children are expected to complete this in 12 days. That's a long-term project, right? Yes. Now, what are the goals? Miss Amaka wants her kids to be able to understand science terms such as fulcrum, effort, load, and lever arm. She wants her students to be able to build a scientific model and construct an experiment that tests specific variables. She also wants them to be able to consider how elements of design affect performances. Now, let's take a look at what happened in the classroom discussion. What happened? Let's check it out. So what students would learn from this activity and how it would fit with the unit about motion that they had just completed. So here they are discussing what they will learn and how it will fit into the unit about motion, which they just learned in science classes. What a catapult is, they're also discussing that how changes in the design can change the distance in an object will travel when launched. They also discuss possible designs, and groups had some time to look up samples on the internet. Now, instructions were given for their first model. So Miss Pedro actually gave instructions. She told them this is what to do. This is how you would do it. This is how you go about it. These are the materials you would use. She also, watched them create their models and run their tests. Before they started their work, she told them what their learning goals were, their success criteria, what the rubric was, and explain how to carefully track their design changes. So in this particular project, it answers fully the question 1. They know their lesson objectives, they know their success criteria, see that the activity is long term, but do they get to plan their work? No. Guess what? Miss Pedro has planned the work, designed what they are supposed to do, provided all the materials, and given them everything they need to do. So what they need to do is just follow the steps and follow the criteria to do that work. So yes, this particular activity is coded 2. Yes. So I'm sure on your own you can design code 3 and of course you know what code 1 is. As long as the questions are not answered, it's a code 1. So if you can design code 3 by yourself, share with me in the comment section a lesson activity that is coded 3. I look forward to getting your submissions, okay? I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I look forward to next week's rubric. We'll be discussing a different rubric. You know the topic? If you have been following me, you should know the topic. We are discussing again all the rubrics in the 21st century model I earlier listed. So if you have been following me, you should know the rubric, okay? So see you next week Saturday, and thank you for joining us on the Ed Innovators series.